Welcome to As I Live and Grieve, a podcast that tells the truth about how hard this is. We're glad you joined us today. We know how hard it is to lose someone you love and how well-intentioned friends and family try so hard to comfort us. We created this podcast to provide you with comfort, knowledge, and support. We are grief advocates, not professionals, not licensed therapists. We are you.
Hi everyone, welcome back again. Here we are again, As I Live and Grieve. I'm still grieving. I know you probably are too. With me today is one of my very favorite people. Dorian's back. He was here, I think just about almost 2 months ago and told us his story a bit. But we have some exciting news today, which we'll probably tell you a little later in the podcast. For right now, help me say hello to Dorian. Hi there, welcome back.
Hi, Kathy. So good to see you again.
Thanks. So good to have you back. Would you just remind our listeners a little bit of your background, just a touch?
Yeah. So where it all started is about 6 years ago. My oldest son passed away in a hiking accident, and I was able to, with the help of a good co-writer or co-author, to be able to put the story together about the search for him, but also a memorial hike that we took all the way to the top of the mountain that he hiked up. And the last text that he sent me was, this is a beast of a hike, but talk about a view. And I can tell you that it is an amazing view from the top. It's beautiful. But what the amazing part about this traumatic experience is so many things have happened that are beautiful. And you would never think that. We talked on our conversation, we talked about the collateral beauty aspect of things.
Right.
And so when we are talking about that, there are so many things that I've received, relationships, connections, different information on how to talk to people about healing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where you and I started talking about all of this stuff, was putting together a way for individuals to start telling their own story as well. Because in all honesty, there's so many things that I have struggled with, whether or not my voice would be heard. And so it's amazing how with this book, it's called The View from Above, which led to another book called A Day in the Life of Grief, where I talk about 10 different myths that go along with grief, but also there's 10 different secondary type of losses that go along with these myths. So it leads to so many different things and so many different conversations. It allows us to reach out to different people and say, you know what, we want you to tell your story, not in a way that shows, how a victim would go through things or how a villain, because everybody else is telling your story, but how you heroically went through climbing up this mountain, so to speak, and everything that you've learned and the things that you're grateful for, the things that you are, if you would not have gone through that experience, you would not be the person you are today or not know you are that person today. And so that's what's led us to our podcast today, talking about, and I'm excited about it because of what it is and how it's going to affect a lot of people.
Absolutely. And kind of where we started, but this podcast is now almost 3 years old. And I have to say, when I started the podcast, I could barely make it through an episode without reaching for the tissues. Here and there, with each guest, I have shared tidbits of my story. And then finally, about a month ago, I needed to take a break. And I did that. But before I left on my break, I told my story. I can't tell you how powerful that was for me. I feel over the 3 years in general, I have healed just by sharing little tidbits of my story. But somehow putting it all together and just speaking to you without a guest present to interview, it's just me talking to the listeners, that was really powerful for me. So in talking with Dorian more and more, we started talking about collateral beauty. And one of the things we decided that's really beautiful is the effect that telling your story can have on you as you're grieving, because the more often you talk about your experience, about your loved one, about your loss, the more you heal. I also have to say that sometimes it happens so gradually you don't even realize that it's happening. But you're happy when someone wants to hear the story, because it's a way you keep your loved one alive in your heart
Mhm.
by
Yeah.
talking about them. Every time you
Yeah.
say their name. Now, coincidentally, the day we're recording this happens to be September 17th. I only say that because today is significant for me, because this is Tom's birthday, my late husband's
Mm.
birthday, today. He would have been 74 years old. It was a day when I woke up that really kind of touched me immediately with that sadness that it comes back. I won't lie. It comes back all the time. But I got the most beautiful email from one of his sisters thanking me for being there at the end of her brother's life because she knew he was happy. And that
Wow.
email touched me. So here I am. It's Tom's birthday. I get a wonderful message. I've thought about our story the entire day. And now here I am with Dorian. And we are trying to tell you, the listeners around the world, that we want to hear your stories. Not only
Absolutely.
do it interests us. We want to learn more about how other people are feeling, how other people are grieving, what they're experiencing, what they're going through, and how their lives may have changed for the good or the worse. We want to hear your stories. So we have decided, Dorian and I, to collaborate on a book, and we need your stories to help us write it. Right, Dorian?
Yes, ma'am.
What are we going to
Yes,
do
ma'am.
with your stories?
We are going to put into a book different stories about a person's life, about the different types of loss that they've gone through,
Mhm.
and the grief that they have worked through, the healing process, what they've overcome. But what we want to do is we want to do that as if they're telling their story to somebody else who is going through that, as a way to help them to understand. I know the thoughts and feelings. I know what it's like to wake up on my son's birthday and to say, I hope I can make it, because from his birthday to the day that he
Mhm.
passed, that's a long month. That's a
Yeah.
long month for me. Even the other day, I saw some. There was a chill in the air. It was a beautiful fall day, and everything that reminded me of that day was centered around him getting ready to go to a cross country meet, or we were going to go hunting, or we were going to go fishing, or we are going to do something. But it just something triggered me, and I'm just like, okay. But I'm so grateful for the those moments, those feelings, because what it does is it reminds me of the love that I have for him that is still there. And when somebody says, I'm so sorry, thank you. That means a lot to me. However, I'm honored to be able to talk authentically and vulnerably
Yes.
about what I went through and what I do go through. You
Yes.
know, it's still not easy. It's not easy at all.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And
Right.
so go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that you have no idea when you tell your story how much you are helping someone else. Now, if that someone else is grieving, you are going to help by letting them know that they are not alone.
Yeah.
Their
Yep.
grief is going to be different than yours. Everybody's grief is different. They're like your fingerprints. We all suffer grief in a different way, but they're going to know they're not alone. They know that someone else is grieving at the same time they are. If they're not grieving a loss, you're going to help them better understand what it feels like, because they're going to see the look on your face. They may see that errant tear that trickles down your
Mm-hmm.
cheek. They
Mm-hmm.
may hear that catch in your throat
Yep.
as you stop and then continue to tell the story. Your stories are so, so powerful, each
Yeah.
and every one of them.
Yeah.
We've decided on an analogy that we're going to use for the book, and we thought of what a caterpillar goes through to become a butterfly. Now, I know there are children's books about it that talk about grief with the caterpillar turning to the butterfly. There are all kinds of things out there. But we weren't thinking quite so much about the fact that the caterpillar becomes the butterfly, but what that poor little critter goes through to become that butterfly. So we're
Yeah.
entitling this book
Yeah.
The Chrysalis Effect. The Chrysalis Effect, because it is in that cocoon, it is in that chrysalis that the caterpillar endures unbearable experiences, yet still comes through it in a different form. Go ahead, Dorian, your turn.
Yeah. Okay. So my thought, as we talked about this, it was like throwing out different ideas. How do we approach this? Because we want to talk about the concept of not the caterpillar, not who we were before, but not forgetting who we were
Right.
before and the experiences that led up to going into the cocoon, going through the upheaval in the chrysalis. But we want that very moment where the butterfly is free from that chrysalis
Yes.
and still he's standing there, he or she is standing there, spreading its wings, drying them, and preparing itself so that it can fly. And my first thought was, well, how does it know how to fly? How does it know how to do that? It's because it realizes exactly what it is, who it is, why all the um, everything that just had endured, what the purpose of that is. So I put something together to talk about what, as I see it, the chrysalis effect is.
Okay, go ahead and read
And
it.
okay, and so I'm hoping I'm gonna go through this a little bit and make sure that I read it right. Okay,
Okay.
the chrysalis effect. This is the instant that a butterfly recognizes that it is a butterfly. It knows what it had to go through, all of the struggles and the loss to get to this very moment. It knows its true authentic self. It knows what it has become. In that very instant, while preparing its wings, it has reached its full potential. It begins to stretch and pump its wings for flight after having gone through real upheaval inside the chrysalis. It's almost ready to fly. While it still will remember what it was and the experience it had to go through before this life changing transformation, its struggles are far from over. It is just beginning a new phase of life. Just as all caterpillars must go through this process, all people must go through a similar process of unbecoming to become. There must be a time of upheaval while reinventing themselves. We must all do it in our own individual and unique way. In that very instant of a person coming out of their own chrysalis, there is that moment where we must see ourselves as we truly are, our own authentic self. We also must remember and be grateful for the experiences that brought us to this moment and have made us who we are. Only then can we move into this new phase of life that will allow us to spread our wings and fly. Only then will we be able to explore the places we could not have ever gone in our previous phase of life. Only then will we have finally become. And that is what we want to talk about. That's what we want people to share is the fact that at that very moment where we have thrown that chrysalis and we are standing there saying, we know why we've gone through this. We know why, because we need to tell our story and we need to turn to somebody who has gone through either something similar or as they have gone through something, we can share the concept of yes, we know those feelings and emotions. We're not going to tell you how to feel or what the struggle is from here on out because that's individual. But we're going to sit with you and we're going to say, what do you want? What do you need? And we're going to talk about this because we see you because of what Kathy and I have gone through. We can look at you and say, let's talk about the courage that it took to go through that. Let's talk about the patience and the kindness that you showed, also the grace that you showed to someone else
Right.
and to yourself.
Right. And I know someone out there is thinking at this very moment, it's not like I had a choice. No, you didn't. But it's how you chose to come through your grief. And
Yeah.
yes, for a while you may have been on the couch, unable to do anything except to get up and get yourself a cup of coffee. Maybe you finally gravitated to the point that you were able to get up and go take a shower. But eventually, at some point, whether you really realize it or not, somewhere in deep in your soul, you had the thought, I can't continue to live like this.
Yes.
You may not have heard those words in your own mind. I did. I remember that day when I said to myself, I do not want to live like this for the rest of my life. And from that point on, there was a huge difference in my day, in my attitude, and I moved forward. And I have to tell you, that made all the difference in the world to me. So by telling your story, you can share your experience with others. And I remind all of our listeners, we have listeners around the world in over 90 countries. And I think there's something like 150 countries in the entire world. So we are literally around the world. You have a chance to tell your story regardless of where you live. We all go through similar experiences. So we want you to help us help others.
Yeah. And I think, to that point, sometimes, again, the hard part for me was thinking, how do I tell my story so that it doesn't sound like poor me or this is what I've gone through and no one's ever going to understand. The beautiful part of all of this is the ability to be authentic and vulnerable and say, yeah, I went through this and it was hell. It was
Yeah.
there are days when nothing makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
I had a someone tell me not long ago. They said, it's been 2 years since this has happened. I think your husband passed away, and it's time for me to move on. And
Mm-hmm.
I just very kindly said, you know what? I remember when my son passed away, and I remember the moment I decided it was time for me to move forward. I
Mm-hmm.
don't ever want to move on
Mm-hmm.
because that erases memories, you know?
Yep.
And so I don't want to erase. I'm okay feeling the pain sometimes because of all of a sudden I love the memories that are recreated because of that memory, because of the love I have for him. And when something comes up and somebody says, I remember this, I remember that about him, I love, there were so
Mm-hmm.
many times people would say, I don't know if I should share this with you because I don't know where you are.
Mm-hmm.
My response is always, and always will be. If I cry with you about my son, it's a beautiful thing. That connection that you have with my son
Mm-hmm.
is amazing. And I love that you love my son because you saw him for who he is,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And so to tell this story about how we go through certain things, it's it's not just going to be about, hey, here are the words, here's what I went through, here's how I felt, and that. No, it's going to be, we want to hear your story because at some point we're going to ask, okay, we want you to retell it, but tell us about the courage and the
Mm-hmm.
dignity and the bravery, but your integrity, how you stuck it out. There's certain things. Why did you act? Why do you keep questioning yourself about how you responded or acted clear back here when in real time, if you get punched in the nose, sometimes you don't know what to do. So
Mm-hmm.
let's look
That's
at
it.
it and say the reason that you did respond this way is because of the fact that that is who you are.
Right.
Period.
Right.
That is who you are. And so teach somebody else that how to have the patience, how to
Mm-hmm.
be accepting and understanding of certain things that you don't understand and you never will.
Right. Right. And so here's the process that we're using. We've developed a very short questionnaire, if you will. It's really just a few questions. And the link to it will be in the podcast notes. So all you have to do is read those podcast notes and you'll find the link. It will also be on my website, on the podcast website, in those notes as well. Or you can send an email to info@asiliveandgrieve.com. We're not asking you to write out in great detail your story. In this little questionnaire, we're just asking a few very basic questions. What kind of loss did you suffer? Now, most of the time, and you're going to hear me and you're going to hear Dorian talk about having lost my husband, his son, and yes, that is probably the most common type of loss that you think of when you think of grief. But there are other losses as well. The loss of a relationship, the loss of a marriage, the loss of a job. You grieve from so many things. Our kids are grieving. Oh gosh, just think of COVID. We're all grieving
Yeah.
from COVID. So there are many, many types of losses. So we'll ask that question. We will ask you to just briefly tell us a little bit of your story. That's all you really need to do, and give us permission to contact you. We will contact you. You can tell us your story. We can ask you questions to help you tell us your story. We're not asking you to do the writing. We're just asking you to reach out to us and let us talk to you and hear your story. Did I cover
Yeah.
that right,
Yeah.
Dorian? Yeah.
Yes,
And then
ma'am. Yes,
and
ma'am,
then
you
we're going
did.
to put these we may use pieces of your story here and there. It can be anonymous if you really don't want your name. We're happy to share your first name, whatever you want to allow us to do. We're comfortable with that. Generally speaking, we want to have a book that other grievers can pick up, read, and find comfort. And we're
Mhm.
inviting each one of you to help us with that book by being a part of it. Our two
Yeah.
stories aren't enough. We
Right.
want more. Think
Yeah.
of the chicken soup books, Chicken Soup for the Soul. Think of those little snippets of stories here and there that help support. That's kind of the concept we're looking for.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to share is there may
Mm-hmm.
be people who think, you know what, my story doesn't really matter. It's another person who has lost a dream or lost a marriage, a relationship, a spouse, a child. I don't want to, go down the road. I can't talk about it. Um, Steve Jobs. I don't remember the whole entire quote, but he said that the storyteller is the most powerful person in the world. And it's not about their story, it's how the storyteller shares the feelings and the emotions that they went through to get to where they were able to make it through their story. And I can honestly tell you that the feelings and emotions that I can share with others by sharing my story is amazing, because what I've also found is losing a child, I can also say, I understand, I don't understand this loss that you
Mm-hmm.
experienced, and any secondary losses, why you're going through different myths, whether it be strong people, only strong people grieve. That's not true. We all have to grieve. But to sit and look at somebody and say, have, I've, I've gone down this rabbit hole, I don't know how many times.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know the feelings and emotions that go along with certain pain that goes along with grief and that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not asking you to tell all of that story. I'm not asking you to say, do you agree? Do you understand? Validate me. I'm not asking that. I'm saying I want to know your story because it helps me, it helps Kathy to better us so that when we are standing on our chrysalis and we have to sometimes come back to that point and say, okay, I'm ready to do this again. I'm ready to do this again, because there are so many losses and so much grief that we have to go through. Sometimes we have to go through a chrysalis more than once
Yeah,
for the same experience because of the loss.
that's right. And sometimes we go through them because we suffer different losses.
Yeah.
You know, I've
Yeah.
I've lost my father, an infant son, my mother, and my husband. I've gone through chrysalis before, but this is the only time that I feel like I reached the butterfly stage.
Yes. And beautiful. I mean, it's I don't know of a more beautiful concept to visualize when that, and you if you watch just even a little video of it,
Right.
as soon as they break out, they just start stretching
Yep.
because they are ready. The only thing they have to do
Right.
is let their wings dry, and they're
Yep.
ready to go. And
Yeah.
they're saying, whatever's left, I got this. It's going to be easy compared to what I just did, but it's because I know I'm a butterfly. I know how to fly.
Right. Right. So we're going to wrap up now, but I want to make one more comment. Lest you think that Dorian and I are doing this for our own personal monetary gains. Proceeds from this book, which is going to have the title The Chrysalis Effect. It'll have a subtitle relating it to grief. We haven't chosen that part yet. The Chrysalis Effect. All the proceeds from this book are going to go to the Global Grief Network, which is a collaborative group primarily on Facebook, but we're reaching out into LinkedIn and other platforms. But it's a collaborative group of clinicians, therapists, counselors, authors, teachers, coaches around the world that work in the field of grief and mental health. So the money is going to help others in amazing ways.
Yeah. And most everybody, if I'm not mistaken, in the network have their own story to tell, and that's why they're there.
Absolutely.
That's the beautiful
Absolutely.
part. I mean, they may be a counselor, a therapist, a psychologist. They may be an author. I don't have the experience. I have the experience of going through certain things,
Uh-huh.
but not the mental health aspect of it. And yet,
Right.
what I've been given to share is sometimes as much to say, this is what I've experienced. I've been through it. And so,
Absolutely.
all of us, there are some amazing people we've met. And that's part of the
Mhm.
collateral beauty as well, to
Right.
go through something, to visit with people who have gone through the same type of things. And
That's right.
they look at us and say, you are beautiful. Look
Yeah.
at how amazing you are.
Yeah.
Thank you for helping us.
Yeah. So just as we want to help you by having this podcast and bringing guests in every week to talk about different perspectives and aspects and focus on different parts of grief and different types of grief, now we're turning the tables. We need your help. So please, again, look in the podcast notes, click the link, or send me an email, and we will reach back out to you and collaborate with you so that you can tell us your story. Any closing thoughts, Dorian?
All I was going to say is you can reach out to either Kathy or I, even on Facebook, and friend us, message us, ask questions about it so that we can help you make the decision on what you want to write.
Right, absolutely. Thank you. Dorian, thanks for joining me today. Thanks for collaborating with me. We are both so excited about this project. We talk a lot about it. We're working hard on it, and now we're at the phase where we need content. We need your help. So, with that being said, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Please consider telling us your story. Take care of yourselves, and check in with us again next week as we all continue to live and grieve.
Thank you so much for listening with us today. Do you have a topic that you'd like us to cover, or do you have a question from one of our episodes? Please email us at info@asiliveinggrieve.com and let us know. We hope you will find a moment to leave a review, send an email, and share with others. Join us next time as we continue to live and grieve together.